Sunday is the last round of the 2018 Formula 1 season. A very sad time, a time when we reflect on the season, and yeah, it's just been really a big roller coaster, but it's a very sad time. We absolutely hate it when it comes to the final round. We've got a few goodbyes to see. Obviously, people moving teams like Daniel Ricciardo, people bowing out of Formula 1, going to different sports, retiring, and one of those big names includes Fernando Alonso, obviously the third youngest driver to enter Formula 1 over 17 years ago with Minardi. It really is absolutely crazy. He's been in Formula 1 all that time, being test drivers, moving from teams left, right and centre, including 2 stints at McLaren, obviously his 2 amazing seasons at Renault, obviously where he won the World Championship, obviously returning to Renault, and obviously returning to McLaren when they were under Honda power, obviously in the last few years, this year with Renault. But it's been a roller coaster for the man who was the youngest world champion in Formula 1 and the youngest double world champion in Formula 1, obviously before Sebastian Vettel came and took his reins over. He has really seen it all. And obviously Fernando Alonso, as I said, entered Formula 1. Well, he entered early testing in 2000 when he was a Benetton test driver. He also tested for Minardi and Benetton again before he entered the sport officially in 2001. Since then, he's had spills with Renault, McLaren, returned back to Renault, then obviously a big stint at Ferrari, probably one of his best. And obviously when we go into the episode later on, we'll be talking about how Ferrari was a big turning point, but probably one of his last ever chances to win the World Championship. And yeah, a very controversial 4 seasons. Obviously his return to McLaren, his how much he could have achieved, what he did achieve, what he achieved in other sports, because obviously that's where he's going to next year, and obviously yes, where he's going to bow out his final race at the 2018 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. Now the man who he's had 311 races in Formula 1. Now that is really great. He joined a very selective group to join the 300 club, which at the moment I think stands at Rubens Barrichello, Michael Schumacher, Jenson Button. If I missed anyone out, obviously please let us know. I don't think Felipe Massa got to that stage, but obviously it was really climbing the ladder. And yeah, a big 300 marks, obviously really great in Formula 1, and he is definitely going to be missed. He's achieved a lot in his career. Now obviously he's leaving Formula 1, like a few drivers have, mainly like Jenson Button, to keep his racing going. He's not retiring. I mean, he might be an old guy. He's 36 years old. He might be quite old, but he's not just retiring. He's not going to get his flip-flops on anytime soon. He's going off to the United States of America to do what he did back in 2016. He is going to be driving for McLaren Andretti, and he is going to be competing in the Indianapolis 500, the Speedway race, which hopefully he can win. Obviously, he's doing this for 2 big reasons. Obviously, the first one is, as I said, to win. He wants to really right his wrong of what he did, obviously, back in 2017, obviously, when he drove that race. He unfortunately DNF'd. I remember watching that. Obviously, so does Jordan. So do you guys probably. Obviously that was really painful to say. I mean, I've really stumbled there to even say words. That was really painful to see, obviously, especially after what he'd been doing in Formula 1. That was horrible to see, but obviously the biggest reason why he is doing this, and really it's incredible, obviously we've all been thinking, when is he going to do that, is obviously to get the Triple Crown. Now obviously, what is the Triple Crown, you might say? Because obviously you all asked. Well, I'll tell you what the Triple Crown is. Now the Triple Crown is obviously when you've won the Formula 1 World Championship, you also win the Le Mans 24 Hours, and you also win the Indianapolis 500. Now obviously there is only one driver who has ever done that in the past, Graham Hill. And obviously Fernando Alonso wants to do that. He wants to emulate that, and obviously he wants to become a Triple Crown holder himself. And obviously that would make only 1 at the moment. Obviously Fernando would then make it 2. And I think that's an amazing achievement. That's an amazing way to set your goals. And he's not retiring, Jordan. He is going out with a bang. He is finishing Formula 1 with 32 wins. It's pretty good. He's going out with almost 2,000 career points. It's pretty good. Even though his last win came back in 2013 at his home race. Obviously that was over 5 years ago. So it's been a long time, and obviously back then it was with the pretty successful Ferrari. And obviously, as I said at the start, I believe that Ferrari was one of his best kind of stints in his whole career, if not the best. Obviously, I know he didn't achieve his world championships, but obviously it was really good. So his last win came then, and that was a long time ago. He hasn't really achieved that much with McLaren, obviously, in his last few years, but yeah, absolutely an amazing season. And next year he is going to be continuing this racing, and it's to start fresh in Indianapolis, but he's going to be continuing his racing career, going for the Triple Crown. Now obviously, Jordan, I think that's amazing. So you think that's amazing as well. Obviously I know that you think the Triple Crown, you talk about a lot. It's obviously very anticipated, it's a high regard, obviously, in the world of motor racing, and it's going to be amazing, isn't it? I mean, to say goodbye is going to be upsetting, but on a positive note, it's great for him. He's going for the Triple Crown.
It is definitely good to say, like, Fernando Alonso going for the Triple Crown. Now, obviously, just touching on what you said there, Lyle, it actually is the Monaco. Yeah, I think Alonso going for the Triple Crown is something that it is really good to be witnessed for, because, as like Lyle said, only one driver has done it, Graham Hill, and obviously that was way back in the 60s. Obviously that was well before our time. So to see Alonso actually go for the Triple Crown, it's just like, obviously for Alonso's sake, it's just going to like put his name amongst like a whole load of legends, not only in Formula 1 but also in motorsport itself. And just further like up his reputation of what a brilliant driver he actually is, because he's shown that in Formula 1, now he's shown that in other forms of motorsport. Now, when he did compete in the Indy, I was so much on Alonso's side. I was obviously like, but like, you know, all the F1 fans, I was like, come on Alonso, like, you can do it. He was going to do it as well, but obviously, you know, typical Alonso, the Honda engine let him down once again, and probably at the most critical time at any point of his career. So obviously the biggest like kind of stab in the back from Honda to Alonso. But obviously he's going to do it again, which is obviously fantastic, because there was rumours that he wasn't going to, but now he actually is. We can go, right, okay, you've won the Monaco Grand Prix, which is brilliant. Obviously he's done that a couple, I think he's only done that once or twice. He's obviously won Le Mans, which he did back in, well, this year, 2018. Now he's going to go for 2019 for the Indy Car win. Come on Alonso, you can certainly do it as well. But before he was even considering getting the Triple Crown, obviously way back, let's say back in 2003, when he actually got his first win at the Hungarian Grand Prix. I mean, I think that was probably the first stage of the I am Fernando Alonso and this is what I can do type of stage, because it was like, okay, like this guy is actually pretty quick. Bear in mind that at the start of the season, when he got at the Malaysian Grand Prix, when he got pole position, beaten Michael Schumacher, which at the time was obviously a legend in Formula 1, obviously winning championships left, right and centre at Ferrari, bringing Ferrari up to where they are now. And obviously Fernando Alonso kind of said, right, you know, you're good, but I'm actually just as good as you in some stage. So obviously Alonso getting his first pole position and his first win in 2003, everyone was going, yes, this kid has got something, you know, really good. 2004 was, I would say, obviously it was quite a bit of a quiet year, but the next 2 years just, you know, was just the best out of, I would probably say the best kind of stint that a young driver could ever go through. Now the reason being, yes, he won 2 world championships off the bounce, 05 and 06, become the youngest world champion and then the youngest double world champion. But in 2005, at the time, Michael Schumacher and Ferrari were going from 6 constructors championships wins in a row and 5 drivers in a row. That was amazing what the run Ferrari was going through. They came in 2005 all guns blazing. Renault, I would say, off a pretty decent 2004. They weren't even, they were like contenders, but nobody kind of knew that they would actually put the challenge to Ferrari. And Alonso and Renault and Co stopped Ferrari. They stopped the Ferrari dominance. He was the first driver to win the championship since Mick Hakkinen, obviously before the Schumacher era, back in 1999. So obviously he put himself up there as amongst, you know, some of the best F1 drivers of all time, and of course beating the legend that is at the time 7-time world champion Michael Schumacher. So we knew that this guy was the real deal. So obviously those 2 years of Renault obviously was absolutely brilliant. 2006 was even better than 2005. Won the championship with flying colours as well. Nobody, you know, Schumacher had a more competitive car. He bowed out of Formula 1, and that was, you know, that was pretty much it. But obviously during those stints, I think it was announced. I heard this somewhere. I'm trying to find it. I don't know if it's true. During the 2005 season, I'm sure Alonso was announced as the 2007 McLaren driver before, I don't know if it's before or after his World Championship. I'm pretty certain, obviously quote me if I'm wrong, but I'm absolutely certain that it was announced in 2005 he was going to be a McLaren driver in 2007, so I'm not too sure about that, obviously.
Yep. He was announced on the 19th of December 2005 that he would complete another year with Renault before going to McLaren, in 2007. Yep, you're right, Jordan.
So obviously even then, after he just won his first world championship, he's already looking ahead. Now at that time, I think it was 2005, McLaren, I think 2004 had, I think, a very poor season. I mean, actually, funny enough, guys, it was down to reliability on the Mercedes engine. I remember that in 2004 was a poor season. 2005 was a bit of a better season with Kimi Räikkönen and Juan Pablo Montoya, who was at the helm at the time. And obviously, I think during that course of the season, I think Montoya was kind of like questioning his future in Formula One. So obviously, hence why probably Alonso agreed to deal with McLaren, a year or two before, obviously actually going as it. It's a bit unusual that you do hear a deal like that go ahead, such well before, you normally hear a month or two before you are due to join, but obviously a year, it's unheard of these days. But anyways, so obviously those days at Renault, obviously absolutely brilliant, best years of his career. Goes to McLaren, obviously as I said, going into 2007, he went into the team, but obviously big-headed, two-time world champion, best driver in the world, but without a shadow of a doubt, obviously, as I said, established himself as one of the best drivers in Formula One one day. He was tipped to match Schumacher, even beat Schumacher. He obviously he could have done it. Go to McLaren, revamp McLaren, brand new sponsorship in Vodafone, changed both the drivers for 2007. In comes GP2 champion, as it was called at the time, and rookie Lewis Hamilton. There was a lot of things riding on this young F1 driver. Obviously, over here in Britain, we do like our F1 drivers. Obviously, him coming in, and obviously a two-time champion in Fernando Alonso. Alonso came in that team, and he just thought, okay, I'm Mr. Big Guns over here, two-time world champion. I'm going to absolutely floor you, Lewis Hamilton. And obviously, that wasn't the case. Hamilton started beating Alonso in qualifying and in the race. Alonso was firmly put back in his place, and that caused, I would say, a very sour relationship between himself, McLaren, and obviously Ron Dennis, because obviously Alonso was accusing the team of being biased towards Hamilton. Yes, he came through their ranks. He was calling this, calling that. That incident in Hungary 2007, when Alonso stayed in the pits longer than he did in qualifying for the last qualifying session. So obviously Alonso managed to get another lap in, and obviously by the time Hamilton crossed the final, obviously got around the final corner, the lights went out and Q3 was finished, and he couldn't get another lap. And obviously Ron Dennis was kicking off with Alonso's engineers, and then had Spygate scandal in between McLaren, Renault and Ferrari, and it was just all sour pretty much from there. And it did damage a little bit of Alonso's reputation. That was kind of like the dark days of Fernando Alonso's career. So obviously Lyle, going from, I would say, the top, very, down to the bottom, in between the days of Renault and McLaren, would you consider Fernando Alonso's move as a mistake going to McLaren, and should he have stayed with Renault for 2007? Bear in mind that he just won 2 world championships with them. Do you think going to McLaren in 2007 was a bit of a disaster and a bit of a mistake for Fernando Alonso?
Well, he wasn't signed with Renault for 2007. His original contract ended, which he signed with the team for 3 years. That ended on the 31st of December 2006. Obviously, Flavio Briatore, who was the team principal at Renault, didn't sign him at that point. Now, obviously, McLaren they were a team that were moving forward as well. Obviously, pretty young, but obviously very experienced. They'd won multiple world championships in the past. Very much outshined by Michael Schumacher. Obviously, they had a lot of drivers, obviously, including Kimi Räikkönen, David Coulthard, and Mika Häkkinen, who'd been through the ranks in the last few years. But obviously, it was mainly Michael Schumacher and Ferrari that were they weren't letting them succeed like they did. Obviously, in the early 90s, late 90s, it was really a bit of a leapfrog between them. Obviously, Alonso was signed for the equivalent of $46 million at the moment in 2017. Obviously, $39 million back then. Did you actually know, Jordan? Did you actually know, F1 Debate Show fans, that Flavio Briatore actually allowed Fernando Alonso, in partnership with McLaren, to actually test the unbranded MP421 in the McLaren post-season test in 2006 in Jerez. So apparently this was a big thing, and it didn't actually come out at that point, but obviously it's out now, that in an unbranded MP421, he was allowed to test it in white overalls and a white helmet. Obviously nobody knew at that point, but obviously that wasn't the Skygate, that wasn't the Spygate, really that was nothing, that wasn't even the tip of the iceberg. Obviously he made his actual debut on the 15th of January in the test, obviously in a testing show in Valencia. Fernando Alonso did quite well. Obviously, he got his first win in the second race of the season. Obviously, beaten by Kimi Räikkönen in his first race. But no, I'd say it was good, Jordan. Obviously, he got a handful of races under his belt. He won 4 races. Obviously, he did quite well in qualifying as well. Obviously, really putting the hammer to Kimi Räikkönen. Obviously, when the season ended, they all went into Brazil. Obviously, as you know, there was 3 drivers that were up contention for the World Championship. Obviously, Lewis Hamilton, Kimi Räikkönen, and Fernando Alonso. Obviously, it's not a Lewis show, but you've got to say Lewis Hamilton that was the first thing he ever did in his career, and he was a rookie, and I don't think a rookie's ever been in that situation where, you know, he is actually contested for the win of the World Championship. You know, that really was absolutely insane. So obviously Lewis didn't get it, but he did beat Fernando Alonso, well, a little bit. He was level on points, but obviously he got a high finish in Brazil, so obviously he was classified as second. Fernando Alonso finished third, world champion, obviously Ferrari's Kimi Raikkonen. It was good. It was a good season, John. It was definitely good. As I said, obviously he needed somewhere to go. He was talk of the town. Obviously he was the youngest double world champion at that point. He could have gone absolutely everywhere. The unfortunate thing, obviously, which you mentioned, was the Spygate scandal. And the thing is, obviously, there were 3 teams that were involved in that. Obviously, there was McLaren, Renault, and Ferrari. Obviously, Ferrari were dismissed. Renault were partially dismissed, but obviously McLaren took the brunt of the force. Obviously, they were fined $100 million US, and they were removed from the World Championship. They were ceased. Now, obviously, as you know, that was when McLaren won the world. That was obviously a big blow for them, just really, it was terrible. But the main thing was, obviously, they blamed Fernando Alonso. He took most of the hit. Okay, you know, there was people that Fernando Alonso's race engineer, he was fired from McLaren. A few people were fired, obviously, as things shuffled around. But Fernando Alonso was blamed for that incident, and you just think like, he wasn't really. He really wasn't. Obviously, he had run in with Lewis Hamilton before. He wasn't. They weren't friends, apparently. Fernando Alonso wasn't friends with the team, and vice versa. Now, obviously, you might think that's weird because of, you know, somewhere they did go eventually in his career. But at the moment, it was very strange. So to answer your question, no, it wasn't a strange move. It was a very anticipated move. It was great, I thought, for him. You know, to go to McLaren was it was fantastic. Well, not fantastic. It was good anyway. It was good, but it wasn't really that fantastic. He was fined. McLaren were fined a lot of money. Obviously, 100 million, you know, would make a dent in Formula One terms. Obviously, bankrupt many people in the world. But you know, for Formula One, of course, that was a massive thing, especially when the other 2 teams had been exempt from that. As much as it was just a few email and scandals with Pedro Della Rosa, obviously a test driver for Ferrari, and obviously a few documents getting handed the wrong way. So obviously it was quite strange after that. But obviously, after a turbulent year with McLaren, obviously his contract was to 2009, by the way, but it was terminated at the end of 2007. So obviously they didn't want to keep McLaren, they didn't want to keep Alonso. They let him go to any team. The main thing was about this is because that Fernando Alonso didn't actually have to pay McLaren any money. They said that if he stayed any longer, they would have to pay him compensation. So obviously in 2008, he then went back to Renault. Obviously he signed a new deal, obviously up until the end of the 2009 season. Now, obviously, Fernando Alonso could really have gone absolutely anywhere at that point. The McLaren thing kind of did stand, but you know, it wasn't mainly that he just won. He'd won the 2005-2006 World Championships. 2007 was a Ferrari, but obviously it was a Ferrari-dominated year. He was still really the talk of the town. So obviously, he signed for £25 million. He signed with Renault. Obviously, Flavio Briatore, and obviously, who was there. Obviously, when he won his first 2 championships, he was at the helm, and obviously, Brazilian driver Nelson Piquet Jr. obviously joined the team. Now, they had a good season. Renault really were on top, but obviously the big news at that point was obviously the Spygate, the Crashgate scandal. So I think of the name there. There's a lot of scandals going on. Actually, do you know what there is? I mean, poor Alonso, he's caught up in all these. So obviously, I'll tell you a little bit about what happened there, because obviously it was a big news. It was the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix, the first Grand Prix under the lights. Now, really, I love Singapore, obviously. I went there, love it to bits. The first race was really incredible. It was the first event. It was sponsored by AIG, which were sponsored by Renault. And if you didn't know that, meant that Renault had kind of ties in with Singapore, so it was supposed to be like their home race as well, like as a manufacturer as well. And yeah, it was supposed to be a really big race. It had great attendance. It was fantastic. All the lights and the glitz and the glamour, and it was kind of spoiled at the end. Now, obviously, as you know, Nelson Piquet Jr. crashed out towards the end of the race. Now, obviously, this was really big because he crashed at it was the part like where it's going around the marina part just before you get in the tunnel. Now, any crash around Singapore has to bring out the safety car. That brought out the safety car in the first race, just in an off kind of brackety area. The safety car's been in every race. That was started by Nelson. So the safety car came out. There was no overtaking. Renault capitalised on that by pitting Fernando Alonso, and subsequently he won the race. Obviously, Fernando Alonso won the race with Renault. Now, obviously, a few weeks later, it came out by Nelson Piquet, by Nelson Piquet Jr. Sorry, when he told Nelson Piquet that Renault had actually told Nelson Piquet Jr. to crash on purpose and basically throw the race. So that Fernando Alonso could win the race. Now, obviously, this was big news. This was another scandal that Fernando Alonso was embroiled in. Probably didn't want to be, but at this point, he didn't know anything about it. Very much like McLaren. So the subsequent reason for this was Nelson Piquet Jr. was fined. Renault were subsequently heavily hit. And Flavio Briatore was ultimately fired and then suspended from any Formula 1 activity. Obviously, this was a very big thing, John, and obviously he would not have wanted this. Fernando Alonso, as I say, he's been involved in 2 big events. He didn't have a great season in 2009. That was a really big hit for Renault, and that subsequently made him go to Ferrari. Obviously, when Kimi Räikkönen, the Finnish driver, obviously the 2007 world champion, he left Formula 1 to go into Rallycross. So Fernando Alonso jumping ship to Ferrari. Now, was that a fast move? Because, Renault were almost imploding at this point. It was actually really hard to kind of, have a good thing to say about them at this point. The team that Fernando had just won his 2005-2006 World Championship with ended in Renault being fined, I think it was about 80 million. Flavio Briatore fired. Nelson Piquet Jr. suspended for 2 years from Formula 1. Obviously, didn't return after that. Fernando Alonso just missed out on not getting a hefty whack, which he didn't deserve, mind. But he just dodged he dodged a big bullet at that point. So it wasn't looking good for Fernando at that point. And was he reluctant to go to Ferrari? And obviously, where was his career heading at this point?
I think going back to Renault, obviously at the time he was managed and brought up by Flavio Briatore. That's how he got his chance in Formula 1. And that's how he got his chance in Renault Benetton, as it was called back when Alonso was test driver. Back in 2002, so obviously getting that chance was heavily helped by Flavio Briatore and his backing as well, and obviously Alonso's sponsors. So then going back there, it was almost like we'll take you back, and it was supposed to be like a fairy tale kind of like reunion, because obviously 2006 was a brilliant year for Renault. 2007 wasn't so much. So obviously 2008 was like, Alonso is back. What can Renault do? And the past 2 seasons, obviously Alonso wasn't really happy with the direction that Renault were going in. But obviously we can't remember the 2009 season perfectly. Obviously we weren't big fans at this stage, but everyone was saying that Alonso's move to Ferrari was one of the worst kept secrets in Formula 1. It's almost like nowadays, it's like that it's not announced that Lance Stroll is going to Force India, but we know what's going to happen. That's what it was like back then. So that's the only thing that we can relate to. That was such a bad kept secret. So when Alonso was announced that he was going to Ferrari, it was like, okay, a new refreshed kind of Alonso, okay, let's start my career again. It's been a bumpy couple of years. Obviously the move at McLaren didn't exactly work. Going back to Renault, again hit by more controversy as well than obviously 2009, was just a really poor season. So 2010 was supposed to be a very good year for Fernando Alonso going to Ferrari. I mean, it's like, yes, he's in with the Italian team at Maranello. Double world champion. He was planned to add to his world championships. Got it off to a brilliant start. Bahrain, won the first race. Obviously Red Bull dominated that Grand Prix, let's not forget. Vettel got pole, but obviously they had a problem with their car, and Ferrari took a 1-2. Perfect start if you ask me. Fast forward all the way to Abu Dhabi. Obviously Alonso did have a shout. In fact, there was about 5 drivers that could have had potentially a shout in that World Championship, and Alonso was one of those drivers. I think he led the World Championship heading into Abu Dhabi, and obviously he lost out. He was out of position. I think he had to finish on the podium, I believe, or even P4. I think he finished in P7, P8 behind Vitaly Petrov. Sorry. Obviously a Renault driver, obviously, and Renault stopped him winning the World Championship. Very, very controversial indeed. Vettel took that checkered flag and obviously took his first World Championship.
And beat Fernando Alonso. Obviously, Fernando was the youngest at that point. Obviously, now Sebastian Vettel's taken that. So the only record that Fernando Alonso had was he was the youngest double world championship, but obviously he held on to that as much as he could during 2011, John. But obviously, I mean, what happened? Did Fernando Alonso keep the youngest double world championship title?
Did he now? No. In 2011, coming into that season, what a poor car Ferrari had. He won one race all season. That was the British Grand Prix. I mean, that was a race that Vettel actually retired, I believe. I think he retired, didn't he, in 2011, which then allowed Alonso to go to win the race. That was the only race he won. 2012, the car. I've always said the car was absolute garbage. It was just rubbish, absolutely pathetic. But at the course of the season, it got more reliable. Obviously, Fernando Alonso won the Malaysian Grand Prix. Nearly got pipped by Sergio Perez, obviously new driver at the time. In his second season with Sauber, nearly got beaten by the young Mexican, obviously, and a Ferrari kind of like development driver. So obviously that would have been quite embarrassing for Alonso's sake. But he got his act together. Then he had another chance of winning his third World Championship against Sebastian Vettel, who he did lose out lose out the World Championship before. Now obviously has a chance to kind of like redeem himself for Abu Dhabi 2010, and that didn't work. Bearing in mind that Vettel did spin in turn 1, 2, 3, 4. I can't remember off the top of my head. And obviously, when you see that look of like the disappointment on Fernando Alonso's face, I wanted to cry. I still cry whenever I see that. I'm like, oh no, don't. It was very
reluctant to his teammate who did in 2008 when he was feeling a bit upset about losing the World Championship to Hamilton. But when you're just saying, John, about almost losing to Sergio Perez, he did lose to Pastor Maldonado in the Williams, which I thought you were going to mention there. In the 2012 Spanish Grand Prix. On the topic of
that Williams car was very, very good that weekend.
Oh, definitely.
Obviously, Alonso got him, no problem. But then obviously Maldonado managed to catch up.
But on the topic of that, though, obviously 2012, that was one of the best seasons in modern day Formula One. 7 different winners and 7 different races. And then obviously that was both Ferraris, both Red Bulls, both McLarens, and obviously a Williams. So that is really, really incredible. And obviously, I do hope that we will see that again. But obviously, we haven't. It's been mainly Mercedes.
I do hope we do see a season like
Mercedes have won over half of all of the V6 races. I know we're not talking about the V6s yet, but Mercedes have won over half. So I think we're going to be waiting a very long time, John, before we actually see 7 different winners in 7 different races season like we did in 2012, and obviously a race that goes down to the wire again like it did in 2012.
I do agree there. Obviously, Ferrari are coming up quite obviously. I would say fast, but not so much fast. Obviously Red Bull do have their foot in the door as well. But 2012, obviously brilliant season. Alonso just missed out. 2013, Ferrari had a much, much better car. However, Mercedes and Red Bull were just a bit stronger than them. Alonso won his last Grand Prix, which unless he wins Abu Dhabi, this will be his last ever F1 race win. In Spain 2013, all them years ago, which just proves how bad the following years become. So 2013, wins Spain, obviously wins the Spanish Grand Prix, his home race, and then that was pretty much curtains on his F1 winning career. 2014, the first season of the V6 era, oh my word, I mean, it was an utter disaster for Ferrari. What rubbish car, finished 4th in the Constructors, beaten by Williams, who obviously were not as good back then, obviously went to the V6s, had a brilliant set of wheels, or set of engine, let's say. Red Bull, and obviously beaten by Red Bull and Mercedes, eventual Constructors champions. And Alonso is sitting there thinking like, oh my god, like I've lost the will to live. Now on the other about 2 hours plane journey from Maranello to Woking, let's say, Ron Dennis was obviously at the time at the helm of McLaren. Honda had come back into Formula One, and they were sniffing about for a new driver. Obviously, Kevin Magnussen at the time was a driver. No, he wasn't. Yes, he was. 2014, yes, he was. So obviously, he was a driver at McLaren. But I think McLaren wanted someone with a bit more experience. So Ron Dennis was sitting there going, well, Alonso's a very good driver. He wants out of Ferrari. Let's give this a go. Let's see what happens. So he gives him a call, offers him $50 million, just a little $50 million to lure Fernando Alonso back to McLaren and Ron Dennis. Obviously, when the last time he was there, everything turned sour. To partner, obviously, to start off the brand new McLaren Honda new era. You've seen this opportunity, thought, okay, brand new start yet again. Let's see what I can do with the McLaren Honda project. Well, last time Honda were in Formula One, obviously they absolutely dominated the sport. They did well in like the early 2000s. Obviously dropped out of the sport. They're now back with the V6s. And Lyle, tell me, how did it go for Fernando Alonso?
So Fernando Alonso signed a 2-year contract in December 2014 to be with McLaren. for that. Now, obviously, McLaren had Honda, like John said, through the days of Ayrton Senna and Alain Prost, and it was looking, it was just another partnership that needed to be back in Formula One. It's iconic, it's amazing, and they had Kevin Magnussen driving for them in 2014. Not a great year between the Dane and Jensen Button, apart from Australia, which obviously was definitely their strongest race. Obviously, both the guys eventually getting on the podium, obviously after Daniel Ricciardo's unfortunate disqualification in his very first race for Red Bull. And obviously we jumped into 2015, and now it all started bad, and that was even before Australia. Fernando Alonso got a concussion after a very big crash in turn 3 at the winter testing in Barcelona. Obviously very not bad, and he then had to subsequently miss 2015, the Australian Grand Prix, obviously, which Kevin Magnussen actually took again a race for that, which was quite strange. Fernando Alonso then was obviously made a full impact, full recovery, and started driving again for the team. Now, 2015 was supposed to be a big year for them. Obviously, Honda was back. Now, honestly, it was just so bad. Their season, nothing was working with them. The car was just really pathetic. The engine was really, really bad. It was just not working with the team. And obviously, Fernando Alonso came out with a few, really, really good phrases on the team radio. Obviously, Canada was one of his first ones. Obviously, I remember he said, "This is making us look like amateurs." Obviously, that meant that the team, they were making them look like amateurs. Obviously, they had Jensen Button, obviously, who had been in Formula One as long as Fernando Alonso. He was very skilled. He'd won a world championship. He'd been driving for McLaren, his home team. And, Fernando Alonso, obviously, who we're talking about right now. And, they should have been, on there, but obviously they weren't. Just really, really bad from them. Obviously, we're heading into Japan as well, obviously, which is where the very famous GP2 engine came out, which is now Formula 2 engine at this point. And it wasn't going very well for him. It was a hybrid system. It was Honda, and really just it wasn't working for them. Fernando Alonso finished one of the lowest drivers in the 2015 season after really an absolutely abysmal season. Now, I don't even know why he stayed with the team. He had signed a 2-year contract, as I've just said, but I don't know why he even stayed with the team at this point. People were thinking, with Fernando Alonso, he's a very experienced driver. He's driven for Renault, and he's driven for Ferrari. Yes, he has missed a few opportunities in the past, but why is he here right now? Why is he doing this to himself? Why is he putting himself through this? So we headed into 2016. That again started terrible for Fernando Alonso. In turn 3, so another turn 3 incident, he crashed with Esteban Gutierrez. Now, this has been... I remember actually, because obviously this was our very first year, wasn't it, as a Formula 1 F1 debate show, and this was one of our big topics, and you could see it absolutely plastered everywhere. He crashed again in an unbelievable incident. It really was incredible that he was fine. He got out straight away. He got out of the car. No problems at that point that he thought. But Fernando Alonso did suffer a partially collapsed lung and rib fractures, which is very, very painful and very, very dangerous if he didn't set out the next race. So the first one in 2015, obviously it was important. Obviously it was a concussion. He couldn't have raced. By the way, I forgot to mention that he did come out and say that he felt like he was back in 1995, which is very funny. But yes, he definitely couldn't have raced in Bahrain. He was replaced then by the young Belgian driver of Stoffel van Dorn, of which he scored his one and only point, McLaren's one and only point of the season, and obviously his one and only point in Formula 1. And just on a side note, me and Jordan elected him our UCLA Award winner of 2016. So, well done, Stoffel.
Yes, congratulations.
He returned to the Chinese Grand Prix and finishes 12th in his first real full race for McLaren. Now, Fernando Alonso in 2015, it was a pretty good year. He had a few points finishes as well. Obviously, he finished in 5th place at the Monaco Grand Prix. Finished 6th place in the Russian Grand Prix. It was the second highest finish that he had with McLaren since he returned to the race. Since he returned to McLaren, really good race for McLaren. Obviously, they got I think it was 6th place in the Constructors' World Championship, so it was pretty good for them. It was good, and they even achieved 50 points as well, obviously, which they failed to do in that first year. 2017, Alonso, after Jensen Button retired, Fernando Alonso partnered Stoffel van Dorn for the 2017 season. But this is where the big news comes from. Fernando Alonso going for that Triple Crown, like we mentioned at the start. He decides, right, I'm going to go to Indianapolis 500. There is another team in McLaren. There's another Honda-based team in the United States that are competing in Indianapolis called McLaren, and also sponsored by the American ex-Formula 1 world champion Mario Andretti. So Mario Andretti, Indy Car team, why not I try them? So Fernando Alonso jumps ship from Formula 1 for one race, an important race, mind. Unfortunately, it was the Monaco Grand Prix, but jumps ship for a race and goes off to Indianapolis to race in the Indy 500. His race is replaced by Jenson Button, obviously a missed Brit off the put off the grid. We thought it was a great race as well. Unfortunately, he retires after he collides with Pascal Wehrlein. Now, before I go on to the rest of Fernando Alonso's season, Jordan, it couldn't have gone worse. Indianapolis 500. Fernando Alonso doing an amazing race. He was really climbing positions left, right, and centre, and retires. And yeah, there's nothing to say about that, really, is there? I mean, yeah, just a really bad retirement from him, really, really painful, and yeah, just wow. So, but he was really, scarred by that, but he wanted to continue as well, obviously, which is what he's doing next year. Obviously back at the next race after Monaco, and yeah, just a good season in 2017. It was an improvement from 2016 in some ways. The reliability still wasn't there for McLaren, but they were making hints of progression. But the Honda power unit is still really, really painful. They were definitely not getting what they wanted out of that, especially when Toro Rosso are making the move to Honda, obviously, for the next season, when it's actually announced that Red Bull Racing might even be partnering Honda at that point, which they are, but obviously at that point it was only a rumour. But what was confirmed was Honda, with Toro Rosso, were going to be using Honda power. I mean, they're not seen what's happening to Fernando Alonso at that point. It really was mad.
It was crazy.
Obviously 2018 is the season that we're in at the moment. It's a good season for him at the moment. He has reached Q3 over 8 times this year, so it's pretty good for him. And obviously it's all caught up, Jordan. Obviously we're back now at what we're talking about, and he's now heading into his final race, the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. McLaren will be running a special one-off livery which McLaren used in the 1984 Portuguese Grand Prix. The 3 colours that Fernando Alonso has chosen, which are red, white and blue. Obviously red and yellow and blue. Obviously red and yellow red and yellow to signify for the Spanish flag, and obviously blue is his kind of chosen colour. Light blue, the go-karting track, the helmet, and I also think there's a hint of Renault in there for the first time, but I guess you can't really say that. And obviously California, which is his sponsor for when he was climbing through the ranks. Obviously now that was Fernando Alonso's career. Now, I mean, that was very good. It was a great career by Fernando Alonso, really great. Now, question is, Jordan, a few questions. Is he a Formula 1 legend? How much will he be missed? And I know you said it at the start, but will he win? Will he win Indy 500 next year? Because he has the Monaco Grand Prix win, which, by the way, at the start I said the championship. I meant the Monaco Grand Prix. Apologies for that. And he's also won the Le Mans 24 Hours. Obviously, he did it last year when he entered with Toyota. Obviously, basically another blink and you'll miss it moment. So, out of those 3 questions, Jordan, is he a Formula 1 legend? How much will he be missed? And will he win next year?
Well, and only a fool would even consider Fernando Alonso to be an F1 legend. Yes, I know that he hasn't went through the best of times, obviously, in Formula 1. However, looking at his pure driving ability, it is just like second to none. I mean, he got the best he possibly could out of that the Honda engine. Bear in mind that it was probably one of the worst engines that you could ever have in Formula 1. It was just so unreliable. It was so slow. It's like all the drivers said, Button and Alonso did say, and even Stoffel Van Dorn was just saying that, this engine is just apt. It's just, you can't get any power from it. Alonso was still struggling out point scoring finishes. He got into Q3 a couple of times, even in 2017, which was a very, very poo year for them. Finished 9th, I think they did, which obviously it's just absolutely abysmal. So obviously Alonso has just done some, brilliant drives. As like I said earlier in the episode, to 2 world championships with Renault, beating Michael Schumacher. That just was like the first step. Then obviously going to Ferrari, kind of like making a name for himself there. Close to a couple of world championships, but obviously Ferrari weren't there. However, if Alonso was in the Red Bull, I believe he would have been able to win a world championship in a Red Bull, no problem whatsoever. He's a very, very good driver. He should have more than 2 world championships without a shadow of a doubt. Will he be missed? Of course he'll be missed. He's a very fun character to have in the F1 paddock. He's one of the most experienced drivers of all time. I think he's second, just behind Rubens Barrichello on 311 starts. Obviously going for 312 come the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. But as I said about Jenson Button, is this just a goodbye, or is this a see you later kind of moment? Who knows? Obviously, Alonso, even though he has said that yes, this is his last season in Formula One and he won't be coming back, he did say that. I think he said that in his Abu Dhabi press conference. I mean, who knows? We all thought Jenson Button wasn't going to come back, and he did just for one race. You never know what is around the corner. I'm hoping that he does get the Indy Car win. Very, very, backing Alonso for that. But Alonso's career in a whole is just absolutely fantastic. Going to miss him loads. Obviously, adios Fernando Alonso. Thank you for all the memories, and yeah, just continue doing what you do, and hopefully we might be able to see him back in Formula 1. Do you think he'll back in F1, Lyle, soon?
I do. Yes. I think at some point, like you said about Jenson Button, I think that he will stand in, and do maybe that odd race. But yeah, I think he's really an amazing driver. And when he said about being an F1 legend, John, just quickly, I think that he's not a legend in terms of statistics. He's not a legend like Matt Schumacher or Lewis Hamilton is, but he'll definitely he's remembered as an F1 legend. And it's really interesting to say that. I would say that he is. He's not on paper. He's not the best skilled driver. He's not the best successful driver. I meant to say, sorry. He is a very skilled driver. He's not the most skilled. He's not the most successful, but he's definitely a legend. He will be missed in Formula One. And do I think he'll win in Indy Car? I think at some point that he will. Again, we don't follow that sport much. I don't know how competitive it is, but if he could go away and win Le Mans in his first season, a blink and you'll miss it moment, then he could definitely win IndyCar at some point and get the Triple Crown, which is what he wants. And obviously, if you have a goal, that's what you go and do. He doesn't want to mess around with Formula 1 another season. He doesn't want to mess around with McLaren Renault another season. He wants to go for IndyCar, which I think is fantastic. So obviously, muchas gracias, Fernando Alonso, and obviously adios. And that's the end of the episode, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Obviously, if you've liked what you've seen here, have to make sure to like and subscribe to the F1 Debate Show for weekly content. Obviously, end of the season, this weekend in Abu Dhabi. Not very good, but roll on 2019. Obviously, we've got some amazing plans. Obviously, so make sure to stick with us. Make sure to tell your friends. Because we're going to have a great 2019 on the off season, and obviously getting back into Melbourne, which is about 120 days after Abu Dhabi, something like that. So obviously, if you agree with, you didn't really say any point, but if you have anything else to say about Fernando Alonso's career, obviously you leave it down in the comment section below. And obviously, until next time, guys, we'll see you later,
guys. Thank you very much for watching.